that core idea of sharing and registering geospatial web services, coupled with modern, very rapidly evolving experiences, web apps, mobile apps, sometimes no code, low code, or highly tailored, are providing access to everybody. And we work at different levels. So one level is really a strategic level. We help organizations think about their geospatial strategy, how to get the most out of GIS technology to support their mission. When I say GeoAI, I mean the use of artificial intelligence to do things like detect an object in imagery. We know about dashboards and story maps and other things where we're starting to see customers want to have a natural language interface to their constituents, have mapped every tree in Singapore. Every tree has a unique identifier. Every tree has been LiDAR scanned. It has a 3D representation, a digital twin. Some of them from the government around the world, some of them curated and put together by Esri, and many of them shared by our users all over the world who have different expertise or footprints.
Hello and welcome to WGIC, the World Geospatial Industry Council. Our guest today is Brian Cross, Executive Director of Professional Services at Esri. Brian, thank you so much for taking time to join this conversation.
So glad to be here with you. Thanks for the opportunity to talk.
Okay, and congratulations on the success of the Esri User Conference 2024.
Yeah, it was quite an event as always, but it was amazing, and I know many people who will be listening to this had a chance to be there, but for those that weren't, it certainly was another wonderful opportunity for people from around the world to get together and talk about and explore the frontiers of GIS today.
I'm sure. I myself have been there multiple times, so I can completely understand what you're saying. And on that note, I just wanted to ask you, this Esri UC 2024 had the theme GIS Uniting Our World, right? So can you elaborate on how GIS and geospatial technology are uniting the world today as it faces a multitude of challenges across the world?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. Yeah, it's not a new story when you think about the power of GIS, but the idea of uniting our world is powerful. It's an important way to step back and think about it, especially in the face of the world and the challenges that we see today. I think one way to frame it is to think about geography and then maps as the language of geography. And that's a really powerful idea. And it's something that we all in the industry understand, but thinking about how powerful maps are as a medium to express information. If you think about humanity, we have always come to understand maps. We naturally relate to them. It brings people together. It allows us to take a more holistic or comprehensive view of the world as we look at a map, whether it's describing what is or what could be. It connects people. It's a natural way for people to come together. Sometimes I think about, if you imagine people all through history coming together around the idea of a map, whether it was as simple as drawing with a stick in the dirt or painting on a wall or ultimately hand-drawn cartography, even if the understanding of the planet wasn't fully formed yet, to modern digital maps, people come together and stand around maps to make decisions, sometimes literally, other times just through an organization. And it's that kind of holistic view that we know is really essential if we're going to help work together to solve the world's problems. You have to look at the world as a system. You have to look at it holistically. And the theme of the conference, Uniting Our World, was all about bringing together the best technology, the best people to create shared understanding. And understanding precedes action, which is how we address the world's problems.
Yes, true that. And I completely align with your saying that we have to view the entire world as one system and come together. So on that note, would you want to share some of the latest innovations from Esri that support this kind of a vision? And how are these innovations transforming the way businesses around the world are working and maximizing their impact? Maybe an example will really help us enumerate this.
Sure. Yeah. Let me start with some innovations that have been building over time. Then I'll talk to maybe some of the newest cutting edge trends. I think this idea of GIS in the web tier based on web services, not a new idea, But what we're seeing is it's being adopted at scale. So organizations are creating well-formed map or GIS or imagery web services and sharing those services, registering them in centralized portals, and allowing organizations to share information across their enterprise or with one another, especially in the public sector when we're making information more public. And that core idea of sharing and registering geospatial web services, coupled with modern, very rapidly evolving experiences, web apps, mobile apps, sometimes no code, low code, or highly tailored, are providing access to everybody to better use geography in their daily life. So if you're thinking about someone whose job is to inspect a bridge, or someone whose job is doing a census, they're all using GIS now in modern experiences based on these web services that are registered in common portals. That's a longer term trend, if I'll say, but it's really coming to fruition at scale. I can give some examples in a minute of how that's working together. But I also wanted to add on some of the maybe more recent innovations that are really making a big difference. One is the merging of imagery, remote sensing, and traditional GIS into one platform or suite of technologies. It's clear that sensing of the planet is exploding, and the use of that information is also exploding in its usable and rapidly exploitable formats within GIS today. So the innovation with the technology to deal with huge volumes of data and immediately process those into usable imagery, remote sensing information has really been different and important. Another frontier that we talk about, and you're hearing a lot of buzz about it, is digital twins. Well, is that new? Actually, for GIS, it's not really a new idea. It's not, but it is catching a lot of imagination right now. And in some ways, it's a good idea to, if people are expressing interest in something that we've done before, make sure that we're helping them understand the power of GIS and remote sensing, oftentimes in 3D with real-time information, creating an operational digital twin. And I say that to differentiate from an engineering digital twin, which is also incredibly powerful, that design software builds. GIS builds an operational digital twin, so you can understand how an aspect of the real world is behaving, and you can look at it in 2D and 3D and 4D with real time. An aspect of digital twins, if you will, that's pretty interesting to me personally is the indoor GIS revolution. So indoor GIS is the idea of taking all of the GIS concepts and value propositions and bringing them into the spaces where we spend most of our life. If you think about it, indoor spaces aren't really well mapped. And when you think about mapping, I'll go backwards from the beginning of uniting around GIS. Mapping is just the language of geography and GIS, and there's so much more behind it. So indoor spaces really have the rich opportunity now to be modeled, to be designed intentionally, to think about space planning and unit planning, to provide ability for humans to better understand the indoor spaces that they work and play and live in, and better experiencing those as an enterprise system that GIS can support. The last thing, and I know I've added a lot of innovation, but when you bring some of these ideas together, you also see whole of government solutions, which are pretty interesting. So let me give you a couple examples that maybe tie some of these things together. One example that we're seeing at scale is with the US Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, that many people know. Their mission, of course, is to provide emergency response in the United States and sometimes in other countries in support to help people be safe in the times of crisis and to prepare in times ahead of that. What we're seeing now is FEMA is connecting their information with all the other aid organizations. For example, in Florida, a year ago, there was a hurricane, and for the first time, many organizations were connected live into FEMA's portal, and they were sharing on-the-ground map-based information about damage, about people who needed assistance. And FEMA, who flew imagery, was able to process the imagery from the Civil Air Patrol, provided as web services within minutes to all aid organizations, private, public, state, federal, in near real time, which was a huge shift from previous disasters where everybody was collecting their own imagery. Perhaps it was shared over time. Now we had the Federal Disaster Assistance Organization providing imagery to people immediately. And in doing that, they didn't just aid the first responders. They aided all the people filing claims who needed immediate financial support. And they were able to validate that with near real-time imagery and know right away, yes, I understand that your house was impacted. Let's get you that aid right away with no red tape and paperwork. So to me, that's an example of imagery, of in some ways a digital twin, if you want to think of it that way, and of course of web services and portals connecting things together. Another example, if you'll allow me one more, is last year, NOAA took a lead for a US initiative called Climate Mapping for Resilience and Adaptation, sometimes called CAMRA. And to me, that's a really great example of whole of government, where many different agencies in the United States have some bits of critical remote sensing information or compiled analytical layers or models to help us understand climate change over time. But it had never been delivered holistically to citizens. So with the CMRA CAMRA website, citizens of the US are able to zoom into their neighborhood and say, what is the climate going to look like under these 3 different models in 20 different years into the future? I can't remember if it's 2050, 2080, and see the number of hot days, the amount of rain, the amount of flooding, fire risk, and all these other variables at the local level. In addition, it allows people to submit permit or funding requests with the standard permits, which ask for future information before someone can apply for a grant. And it all gets compiled right out of the website. So you actually have all the information about climate futures that one would need to file a request for funding from the government. So to me, that's a great example also of all of these innovations in tech coming together as a whole of government solution that's actually serving critical needs for the public.
Fantastic. And how I see is all of this coming together and the GIS becoming the connective tissue to all this.
Right. Yeah. It's as we talked about, maps are the language, and also maps or GIS are the ultimate integration. Location, for database folks around, location is the ultimate foreign key. It's the thing that binds all the different layers together, and that's exactly how these whole of government kind of solutions work.
Fantastic. Brian, you have been heading the professional services division of Esri and supporting thousands of organizations with the Esri solutions. Can you help our viewers understand the scope of Esri's specialized services for enterprises to solve their business challenges?
Sure. Yeah, we have an interesting role. First, I guess I'll say we do a very small percent of the GIS consulting work and implementation support that the global user community needs. Our job is only really to work on some special projects each year and to help build capacity. But that does add up to about 3,000 organizations we support a year out of my group. And we work at different levels. So one level is really a strategic level. We help organizations think about their geospatial strategy, how to get the most out of GIS technology to support their mission. So we're kind of the translators between the technology and the mission problems that an organization have. But we do everything from those kind of strategic planning to even just short-term, high-value technical help. So somebody needs help creating a real-time system and they haven't used real-time GIS. We may parachute in for a few days and just teach the organization, here's how you do it, here's the best practices. But we always aim, we use the slogan a lot, teach others to fish. Our job is to help spread the knowledge and help other organizations be self-sufficient. Now I talked about rapid insertion of technology. Other times organizations ask us to help them with their full system development lifecycle. So we'll do everything from requirements to actually helping architect and build out systems. But even when we do that, our aim is to leave them with the keys to be able to maintain, expand, adopt, keep working with the system over time. Now that's kind of our direct work with customers. We also work extensively with Esri's partners and with our international distributor organizations that support Esri users around the world. So part of our job is to partner with those organizations. Sometimes because we're the technology shop itself, there may be a new product that's out or capability, so we can bring that to the engagement and we can help the end customer, but also share the knowledge with a partner or a distributor on that new piece of technology or maybe a best practice in architecture. Now you talked about a little bit in the question about what kind of value or outcomes. And I think we're at our best when we're able to help an organization think strategically about the use of GIS. We can come answer a tactical question, but we really like it when we can help people think about their mission, how to use GIS more holistically across their enterprise, which usually is helping people recognize GIS as a first-class IT system alongside the other 3 or 4 first-class IT systems on which they run their business or their agency.
All right. So on that note, considering that so much of innovation happening and supporting the organizations, also want to understand how is Esri leveraging the power of artificial intelligence in its in providing these services and solutions?
Sure. Well, it probably wouldn't be a regular conversation these days if AI didn't come up. So, yeah, for sure. Let's talk about a few aspects of it. I think I could divide this into about 5 different areas. So, first, GeoAI. And when I say GeoAI, I mean the use of artificial intelligence to do things like detect an object in imagery. That's not new. You know that. It's been part of our industry for some time, but I am seeing it advance quite quickly. So, the automatic detection of things from imagery 3 or 4 years ago took a lot of training and hand work to get the system ready. And now we're able to deploy lots of models into the GeoAI framework and very quickly, more elegantly, and in a more powerful way, detect objects or even remove objects. So we're working with a customer right now who needs to do training and simulation, excuse me, and we're actually removing vehicles from all the imagery so that they can see empty streets and actually plan from that perspective. So it's quite interesting. So that's GeoAI. That was the first. The second is Esri is incorporating AI into our tool sets. So like many other technologies, we are quickly learning and adapting to how a human can interface with ArcGIS interfaces by speaking in human language. And so that's going to be slowly coming out in different Esri products. I want to note that our approach to that is to be open. So if you ask the software to build a map with layers or certain cartography, or you ask it to run an analytical model, what it will do is it will put together the commands that one would do by hand, and it would show you all the parameters. So you ask me to run a model, and then it's going to list out, here's all the things that I'm proposing to do. Is that acceptable? Because we don't want to take away the rigor and the choices that GIS professionals make when they're doing complex GIS tasks. So all we're going to do is make it easier to assemble those, and then you can still see what's happening. That's the second thing. The third is we are in the field working with customers starting to use AI, especially large language models, to create new kinds of information products. So what do I mean by that? Well, we know about dashboards and story maps and other things where we're starting to see customers want to have a natural language interface to their constituents. For example, Miami-Dade County, and I believe they demonstrated this at our user conference, has created a hub site where a citizen can ask a question like, show me where a cooling station is near my house. And so it, instead of having to understand the prompts or the search queries, you can just do a natural language search. And we're starting to see those requests in our services implementation and consulting work where people want to create experiences on top of the GIS for basic conversation with the map. That was the third thing. The fourth, in our tech support ecosystem, we are creating intelligent AI-based search, if you will, or conversations. So if you want help on a topic through a web browser or your phone, it's going to crawl through all of our tech support documents, all of our knowledge bases, the support conversations happening in the community forums. So it actually can give you a much more holistic answer than saying, I found it in this manual and that manual and that manual. So, and that's something that most people are expecting that all tech companies are doing. And maybe the fifth thing is more internal, but inside Esri, we're also using large language models to help rapidly search across all of our materials. If you just imagine for a second, the nearly 1,000 consultants and professional services at Esri working with different customers, they're solving very similar problems. And so we can ask a question, or we're working on finalizing it now, or to say, tell me who else is building a permitting system or a workflow-based permitting system, and what customer are they working with? And that will actually pair our two consultants together to say, oh, you're doing it with this county and I'm doing it with this city. And those are very similar technology approaches. Let's compare notes and get the best of breed for our customers. So we're doing that internally as well. Sorry, that was a lot, five different things.
In fact, on that note, and the last point, it's in large organizations, a lot of times things happen in silos without one department not knowing what the other department or division is working, and they end up replicating things. So I think this is a great way to optimize and leverage each other's strengths, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's more efficient than the other way to help an organization stay on the same page is to build centralized systems with lots of structure and rigor. So every time I work with a customer, I have to fill out a form with 16 tags and it has to get stored in one central place. And that just doesn't work at scale with busy professionals. But if you can, so we keep all of our documents in different SharePoint repositories. We have conversations going on in Teams. We have knowledge bases being filled out by tech support. And now we can just ask a question across our Esri internal systems to help our own employees better serve our end customers.
All right. Great. So on that note, I also want to touch base a few other dimensions that you spoke about, like the training and development through the Esri professional services, right, to the organization, so that they can sustain their operations, engage with their customers, and achieve their organization goals. Would you want to throw some light on these training and skill development services?
Sure, happy to. Yeah. So Esri also has a very strong education services group that really supports training on a number of fronts. So we offer all kinds of online courses, of course, everything from MOOCs to digitally online catalogs that we produce to instructor-led courses, and those are all quite popular. The MOOCs, I should have the numbers in front of me, but think of hundreds of thousands of people going to these massive online open courses. But we also work at a more strategic level. So we work with organizations on workforce development strategies and plans so that we can really help them think about, okay, if you're trying to achieve X with GIS, what does your workforce need to know? Who needs to know it? And how do we build a curriculum to help a whole organization advance their skills and do it in a way that's complementary, that covers the bases, if you will. We also work in ways to support adoption. Adoption in an organization is sometimes a change management function, right? So you can build the best tools in the world, you can deploy them in a beautiful system, but if the people who are going to use them don't understand what's coming, how to use them, how to make most use of them, how to get help, then adoption never really happens. And I think you know, and many of the audience will know that most tech projects that don't go well isn't because of the tech. It's because of change management, communication, expectations. So in our education group, we also help support adoption and change management. But we really like it when it comes together as part of a strategy. So we can provide lots of materials, and we do for tactical people who just want to go get training on something and be done. But when we have a bigger idea, a North Star of what an organization is trying to achieve, then we can really tailor a program that helps an organization learn the art of the possible, learn how to be self-sufficient, develop it across the workforce, and level up GIS across the entire organization. And that's what we really strive to do.
Okay, so you seem to be supporting your customers both in terms of a strategic way of implementation and also a very tactical level, and also with all the training and skill development aspects of it. So I just want to understand, how are your customers perceiving the business value of these initiatives and these services and solutions, and especially for the enterprise-wide implementations? I'd like to know your perception in terms of both qualitative aspects and the quantitative terms in which your customers are perceiving the benefits. Maybe an example will be a great idea.
Sure. Yeah. Let me walk through that. There's quite a bit to that, but I'm glad you brought up enterprise because increasingly what we're seeing is GIS is being used, deployed, exercised as a core enterprise technology. It's actually really exciting to see organizations embrace it at that scale. And there's implications for that. But they're doing that because of the value that it's providing, as you referenced. And there's a lot of different ways that value is expressed through GIS. And I think that that's something that this audience understands. Some is just creating shared understanding. If an organization, especially in an enterprise scale, can stop and think about what are the enterprise geographic layers that everybody in the organization needs access to do their job better, then they can share those in scalable ways through powerful and easy to use experiences that provide value to everybody in the organization in many different ways. But let me just pause and think about that idea of what are the enterprise layers that an organization needs to share with everybody on the team. It's different for different organizations, of course. So a bank, it's probably all of where are all their banks, where are all their ATMs, and where are all their customers based, right? For a United States county government, it's all of their parcels because that's their tax base and that's their geographic system of record. Everybody in the organization needs access to those information so that they can do their job better. And when you do that, you have shared understanding, better decision making, and way more efficient business. So that's sort of some of the value propositions: better decisions, increased efficiency, especially when the entire organization has access to critical geographic information, improved operations, therefore, everything from field workers to routing of trucks to efficient planning for the future to design. In public settings, GIS helps increase transparency. You see things like equity and where funding is going and what activities are happening. It also is used to reduce risk. And those are things sometimes hard to put a dollar value on, but if you can keep your organization safe and secure, or you can plan for future risk, like climate change risk, you can have a more resilient and powerful organization. Other times you get straight up ROI, so when you talk about logistics organizations that are routing their trucks more efficiently, it saves fuel, it saves time. So sometimes you get these nice and tidy ROI statements, but in my experience, it's more that whole laundry list of value that's provided. And sometimes you could think of it in reverse. What is the cost of not doing it? What is the cost of not knowing where something happens? What is the cost of not designing spatially, geographically for the future? Some examples. This year at the user conference, I'll use a couple because it's easy for folks to go look at the demonstrations. Singapore Parks and the Urban Redevelopment Agency did a joint presentation on their work for Singapore, a city in nature. It was really quite remarkable because they have mapped every tree in Singapore. Every tree has a unique identifier. Every tree has been LiDAR scanned. It has a 3D representation, a digital twin. They were demonstrating real-time tilt sensors installed on the trees so that if a tree starts to lean, an emergency response team can get to that tree before it falls over. It was mind-blowing. And the value for them is in so many different ways, right? So one is they put a value on Singapore being a city in nature, making it a great place to live, making it more resilient. They also spend a lot of money to do that. And the GIS helps them understand, catalog, plan, react, and manage this together. So URA is planning for the future, and Singapore Parks is managing the current stock of trees and experiences. So that's just one example. I'll just give one more value example, and this is in the public sector, if that's okay. One of our other customers that won an IT award for this, California Health and Human Services, put together something called an all hazards dashboard and equity hub. So they're really creating a one-stop place for the state of California for all populations, especially underserved populations or challenged populations, to better understand all of the different kinds of hazards that they may face, from air quality to natural hazards to weather, as well as equity, access to outdoor information or parks, funding, access to broadband, and all of the different things that we're trying to look at holistically as a society to make sure we're serving everybody well. And this has actually been an award-winning application that is publicly available. I'm sorry I talked for a long time, but those are just some different examples that I think are really interesting.
Very, very useful examples for us to demonstrate the value of geospatial technology. Yes. So I also noticed, Brian, climate change and sustainability have been central to Jack's messages at Esri user conferences for a few years now, right? So I want to understand, how is Esri bringing sustainability practices into its own offerings and supporting customers achieve their sustainability goals?
So as we look at how we can play a part in that, one aspect is continuing to build tools. That's our core mission. And enhancing those tool sets in a way that really support holistic problem solving and big data analytics that are sometimes needed in hard sustainability problems, kind of like the climate mapping and resilience and adaptation website I mentioned before. Part of that is in the area of the Living Atlas, which you may know is the catalog of highly curated GIS layers that are available. Some of them from the government around the world, some of them curated and put together by Esri, and many of them shared by our users all over the world who have different expertise or footprints. That information is really critical because it's the dial tone mapping services on which people need to do the analysis and the local problem solving based on whatever kind of sustainability problem they're looking at, supply chains, local communities, agriculture, all different aspects of sustainability, right? So building tools, building more themes, layers, maps in the Living Atlas, analytical content. In addition to that, I guess at the next level, we strive to share patterns and best practices. We want to help our users understand how to take advantage of these tools in a way that can help in their mission. That's part of the reason why we put a lot of energy into some of those big demonstrations at the user conference. We always want to have users sharing the best practices. That's why it's a users meeting, to share what they're doing with the technology so that they can learn from one another. So, and it's amazing to see what people do. So sometimes we just want to get out of the way, but we become aware of the great work of one organization or another. And it's part of our job to give them the stage to say, can you please share your work? Because others could learn from your tradecraft. Others can adapt to what you're doing and use that in their work. So yeah, that's some thoughts. I can answer follow-ups if you like on that too.
No, I'm good with that. So
Okay.
this brings me to the next part of this conversation, Ryan, and that is Esri's association with WGIC. Esri is one of the founding members of WGIC and continues to be a patron member with Jack Dangermond as the chair of the Patron Board, right? So I want to understand what got Esri to commit to the mission of WGIC 6 years ago.
Sure. Well, we believe in the incredible potential of geospatial technology to help the world be better. And WGIC is really important in helping bring awareness, raise awareness, and help people understand the value of geospatial. So we're very interested in supporting it, and we have been supporting it since we began working with you, because we care so deeply about increasing geospatial awareness in the world. And it's not about one company or another. It's about the larger idea that together, the technologies that we all bring to the table, the partnerships that come about because our technology can work together, is really essential to actually solving the problems that matter in the world today.
That's true. And on that note, how is Esri perceiving the values of being associated with WGIC 6 years after its commitment? And how are you leveraging the complementary strengths of other WGIC members? And any example if you want to cite?
Sure, yeah. Well, I guess I would just say that we see continued value as WGIC goes about the mission, creates materials, brings people together, works on real problems together. I was studying some of the different working groups and the things that are going on in the organization. I'll just give maybe one example from talking with Pat Cummins, who's on our team and on one of the groups, the Partnership Industry Engagement Committee, PIE Committee. It's just been really great to work with different organizations in that team and do real work, like the Global Covenant of Mayors for Energy and Climate, or GCOM, I think is the right acronym, because we're tackling real issues with city leaders around the globe, right? So it's not just an organization that's, I'm use a Jack term, being nicey. We're getting together and doing stuff that makes a difference. So to us, that's where the value comes in, is being able to work with others in working groups, in committees like this, getting things done, bringing geospatial expertise to the table, and helping all of the world's constituents or users of geospatial technology work better to solve the kinds of problems that need to be solved.
That's true, and I agree with you. We're doing great work along with GCOM, actually.
Yeah.
So that brings me to the last question, Brian. We talked about how WGIC is enabling and supporting the very premise of geospatial and GIS technologies. And you're also seeing there's a backdrop of accelerated technology and industry transformation happening across the world. So in this space, how do you see the relevance of WGIC evolving the geospatial landscape in the next few years? And what more do you think WGIC can do to expand its relevance?
Yeah, it's a really important question.
Yeah.
There's really, in my mind, there's two big ideas that you're talking about. So on one hand, the challenges that we face in the world, I don't want to be doom and gloom, but there's a lot. They're becoming more prolific. Climate challenges, social challenges, global conflict. It's a tough time right now. Population increasing, and the world developing quickly. So there are so many different problems that we need to tackle. So I would say the rate of change of challenges the world faces is increasing. And at the same time, technology is changing very quickly and innovation is happening very quickly. So challenge and opportunity happening at the same time. We have to bring those things together. We have to use that innovation to really accelerate our impact to counteract some of the challenges that we're seeing in the world. We can't do this if we all work in our own silos. Yeah. It's more important than ever that WGIC and other organizations bring technology together in a way that real people can use it to attack these real world problems. So with the pace of change of tech, the pace of change of the world, we've got to address that, and WGIC is well positioned to help, along with many other organizations around the world. I think you also asked specifically, what do we think WGIC can do to expand its global relevance? Well, I think that outreach to the global community is really, really important. I know that there's a Geospatial Ambassador program. That's a great example of something that we should be doubling down on. How do we introduce non-geospatial communities to the power of geospatial technology? Help them understand how it can help, understand how easy it is to make impact these days. It's so much easier than ever to implement the basics of a GIS and start solving problems right away. So I think we can just keep doing more to provide representation around the world that helps WGIC expand that mission and help people become more aware and more ready to use the technology.
Fantastic, beautiful pointers and the directions that WGIC need to take in bringing the non-geospatial communities and help them understand the power of this technology, isn't it?
It's great.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brian, for this conversation. I really enjoyed having this thorough conversation with a lot of examples. Thank you so much.
Really my pleasure to speak with you tonight, and looking forward to seeing the community continue to make such a difference in the world.
Great. Thank you so much.